Planning and Land Use Committee supports the recommendations made within the recent Planning and Land Use Management Committee report relative to evaluating and revising the small lot subdivision to ensure that small lot subdivisions are compatible with the neighborhood.
Okay, I got support.
I will go slowly.
Okay.
Where's your shorthand? Okay.
Okay, so the Granada Hill South Neighborhood Council, is this motion will go up to?
Okay, that, we make the recommendation.
Okay.
Yeah, you're being disrupted.
Okay, go ahead.
Within the most recent Planning and Land Use Management Committee report relative to evaluating.
All right, you gotta start from support.
I did.
Start from the very beginning, so I can get it down right here.
But I did too. Okay. Support
Right?
recommendations made within the most recent planning and land use. You got it?
Okay,
Management Committee report relative to evaluating and revising the small lot subdivision ordinance to ensure that small lot subdivisions are compatible with the neighborhood. Basically, I took pieces from the motion itself, and we're just basically supporting this motion that was made
Okay,
by Tom Labange.
let me
Okay.
move through that before you start
Yes.
discussion. Now, you said the most recent Planning and Land Use Management Committee report, does it have a date? Does
Oh,
it
let me see.
rather have that in with a date on it?
Oh, okay, where's the date? I bet that's, okay, I'm sure that's the exact date. Because this was, this, I think is the date when the motion was made, in November, and then the planning and land use, they had another meeting since that date.
Well, there was a report. Does that report have a date on it?
No, there's no report, that's just it. See,
Oh,
they
okay.
wanna make a report.
Support recommendations made within the most recent Land Use Management Committee report.
Yeah.
And that's not
Let me
just
see
the
if I
council
can-
file?
Hmm?
That's not the council file?
There's a
13,
council, there's a
478?
council file 131478.
Then we should refer to that.
But wait a minute here.
Well, so what I'm concerned about is.
We make the right date.
Yeah, we say the
Okay,
most recent
hang on,
report,
hang
and
on.
that's hard if they're reading it to CIS a year from now.
At the public hearing held on July 1st, 2014, consider the motion relative, so July 1st, 2014.
Okay, so I've got support recommendations made within the July 1st, 2014 Planning and Land Use Management Committee report relative to evaluating and revising the small lot subdivision ordinance to ensure that small lot subdivisions are compatible with the neighborhood.
It's perfect. It's right out of the recommendation right
Okay,
here.
do we have a second? Second by Eric. All right, we'll start with public comment. Any public comment on this item? Mr. Guzman?
First of all, as mentioned before, and as recommended by the city attorney's office, it is advisable that when committees put on a council file on their agenda, that they turn that file into a clickable hyperlink so that the public can get to it and see what it is. Obviously, not all of you have read this council file in completeness, which causes me a bit concerned that you might vote on a motion regarding it tonight without having read it first. I would also state that it's probably not advisable to vote on this motion until you've done public outreach to find out how the public feels about it. And I also request that you're going to suggest that the motion's ambiguous because there's no definition of what compatible with the neighborhood might mean. It doesn't describe whether it's the design of the structure, the closeness of the properties to the street, the closeness of the properties. I mean, what does it mean? I mean, to me, this is a meaningless motion because we don't know what we're supporting. We don't have a copy of the plan that has been mentioned, and what hearing, what city agency developed this plan. I didn't hear that mentioned. Is it city planning? Is it city council? I mean, who is it? I'm done.
You know, I hate to agree with Mr. Kuzman, but I think he's absolutely right. Those questions crossed my mind too, because we don't have a specific plan or community plan yet. We're still jockeying for that. I think if we do put something down, it's got to be something that we say we want, regardless of what the specific plan or the community plan comes out with, because since we're still waiting on those, we need to have something that might influence those two plans. I don't know if it will, but I don't know what the specific plan and the community plan has in it.
Specific plan would generally not cover something like this because
Okay,
it's
but what about the
residential.
community plan?
The community plan probably would not address something specifically like this because this is a separate ordinance. This is citywide. Community plan is more specific to Granada Hills. This would be citywide, which probably would override the community plan. And all this is to take a look, you know, because we've had these small lot subdivisions, and all it is the motion is made so that planning open it up and see and take comment. Right now, there's no comment. There's nothing really out there, but just gather comments from the city, gather opinions on how this motion could be more compatible or what we can do to strengthen this ordinance to be more compatible with neighborhood residential development when it comes to small lot subdivisions. So there's really nothing out there on the books as far as recommendations, exactly what they want to do with the small lot subdivision. The recommendation is to open it up and let's start gathering information. And then we can do outreach to the community and get their opinion, because all it is right now, it's an open period. Let's gather opinions. And let's see what we can do, because this is a very problematic ordinance.
Well, there is a council file on it, which means that it goes to the origin of whatever department came up with this.
It's basically, this is a motion made by Tom LaBonge instructing the planning department
Oh, okay.
to come up with a report, to come up with recommendations for this ordinance to make it more neighborhood friendly. Because right now, the small lot subdivision, it's problematic with the height, the density, with the designs. You know, you get a lot, if you saw some of these photos, there's no front door, it's all garage. There's parking is quite limited, so there's no, you know, there's very little setbacks. It's like right up to a
Well, it's an alley. It
it's
looks
like
like an alley, yeah.
It's like an alley. So these are the kind of things that down the road we could be commenting on. All this motion does is open it up so the city of Los Angeles can make a better ordinance. That's it.
Is there anything we can do to make it specific? In other words, height. Start with the height limit.
Well, you know what?
And then go on to...
Not right now.
Okay.
Because you know what? There's no, the only thing that's really out there is to have planning open this up so neighborhood councils, so neighborhood organizations, some neighbors and stakeholders can start making some recommendations as to how this projects that come under the small lot subdivisions could be better.
Right. Well, the point Mr. Kuzman makes is good, but I think what he was driving at comes later, after they've opened this up.
Yes.
to do this review, and that's when we have a chance to make more specific input.
Right, but see, but if this doesn't even go through, that we don't even have the opportunity, all this is giving the city of Los Angeles the opportunity to make this a better ordinance, that's all. Right now, they're not taking any recommendations as to height, you know, weight, blood sugars, all that kind of thing.
Setbacks.
Yeah, setbacks, you know, right now, it's just,
Parking.
you know, we will have plenty of opportunity, believe me, I have a feeling this will probably be going on for about a year or two. We will have plenty of opportunity to weigh in on this down the road, but right now it's just an opportunity. Yes, Russ?
Ross.
So if you look up the council file, if you're an interested stakeholder and you don't need government to hold your hand, you can go on the internet, which is largely available to most people in the United States.
Talk to me,
Look
talk
up
to
the
them, your
ordinance
comments to them.
No, I can make comments to anybody I want to.
Okay.
Thank you.
But then I'll
Or
listen.
utopias.
If you're directing this towards me, I'll actively
I can look at whoever I
listen.
want to in the room, Mr. Kriegman.
Well,
I'm sorry if
it
that
seems to be
offends.
directed, so if it's directed to me, I'll listen.
If you look it up, you'll find a PDF with letter after letter supporting and not supporting the ordinance. And it even speaks to Mr. Labange, is that his name? Several of these even speak to his motion. So this is already readily available, and there are already councils that have weighed in, and it's all part of the council file.
Right, right.
So what you're doing is really no different than what they're doing.
Right.
Which is simply recommending.
That we move with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then later on down the road, you know, we as a council, other councils, because this is a particular kind of a development that applies to Granada Hills, we've dealt with this, and it's coming. So hopefully, our council, along with other neighborhood organizations and councils, can really put some meaningful amendments to it down the road. Right now, all it's doing is just opening it up to have the opportunity to do that.
So there's 14 pages of people weighing in, other councils, individual citizens. Plenty of people are already.
Yeah, it's a
Speaking
hot
to the
ticket.
city.
It's a hot ticket item. It's quite contentious. You know?
Okay. Any other comments, discussions? Anybody?
Yeah,
Mr. Guzman?
Ms. Fisk just mentioned that we've dealt with the issue before. Can you tell me what?
It was on Chasper Street. It was Jerry, I don't remember the address. It was probably
I
6 years
think
ago.
it was between Aldea and.
Yeah.
Well, what
Amstel.
year? When?
Right after the ordinance
about
was adopted,
4 years ago,
5 years ago.
4 or 5 years ago, it never materialized, but I still have.
Well, when you say you dealt with it, I'm just looking for the time period that it was
And
dealt with.
it was problematic because we were asking a lot of questions and of the developer, and it was very problematic. So anyway, so it'd be nice if we had more guidelines for something like this down the road in the future.
I have one more comment on this, if I may. You do understand, with a small lot subdivision, the developer that owns it, that land has a multi-unit dwelling zoning of RD 1.5 or higher.
Multifamily.
Multifamily
Yeah.
dwelling zoning,
Right.
whether it be RD6, RD2, RD 1.5, whatever. Basically, with those zonings go along the developer's option to build a big old huge honking apartment building there if he wants, within the limits of how many units he can have per the zoning. I want to really impress upon you, because this issue came up at Northridge East, who had somebody come in and talk about the small lot subdivision that occurred at 9800 White Oak. Are you familiar with that project?
Yes.
I remember seeing it come across, but I didn't look at it.
Okay, as a point of information, I want you to know there's one nearby here in our community that's been established, and where they could have built a big apartment building, they built single-family homes. And they're
That's
not
what the small lot
unattractive,
subdivision
and they
is.
don't seem to be out of compliance with the neighborhood there. So, again, with this small lot subdivision, keep in mind, if you make it so hard for the developers to do the small lot subdivision, you're facing large apartment buildings instead.
That is not true.
No, that's not true.
That
at
is
all.
not true. Basically, this is something that, and actually these are some very nice projects. It's just where they go and how big they are and how dense they are and how they compare to the neighborhood. So if we as a city can have more input to help the developer and help the neighborhood, I think we should all be for something like this.
My recollection of that project on Chatsworth was I know he was going through a tentative.
Lot subdivisions.
Vesting tentative tract.
Yeah.
Process to get the zone changed. And there were a couple issues that had come up. One was, and you brought up the point that it's a multifamily zone. the developer was claiming that RD 1.5, since there's a 1 there, that it's a single-family zone, and therefore didn't need to provide the extra parking
Parking.
under the specific plan that's required in a multifamily zone. So he designed it around, I forget what it was, 2 parking spaces?
1.5.
Yeah, something like that.
1.5.
But there was an extra quarter space per
Yes.
unit required
Yes.
for multifamily zones. So that was an issue. And then we
Trash.
also, well, yeah, there was a trash pickup and where those were located. But the other piece was,
There's a landscaping design, there was setbacks. there was-
Setbacks.
There was guest
Setbacks.
parking.
he didn't set up a homeowners association, basically,
Yes.
or an
Yeah.
association to take care of the landscaping. The landscaping was the responsibility
Of
of the
each.
2 front unit owners.
Or even each unit.
Yeah.
Just the 2 front unit owners.
Oh.
Though
Yeah.
it was their
And that wasn't gonna work.
responsibility, and I know the city balked at that because that's actually a requirement in the small lot subdivision ordinance. And then there was one other issue on it, and I'm not remembering what it was.
I think we were concerned about the inch space between each building.
Yeah,
Yeah, but that's-
I know, that was
that's
something I
legal.
brought up.
I mean, that's
Yeah,
that's what it is.
Yeah,
Um,
but.
Oh, I remember what it was now. He was asking, or planning to ask for a variance or an exception, so basically so that before the zone change occurred, he would have the rights to build the buildings according to what the small lot subdivision would allow him, so reduce setbacks and that. And one of the concerns that planning had was sometimes people will say, oh, I'm gonna rezone this land, so I want these exceptions. And then they'll drop the rezoning request and take the exceptions and build.
Have a shoe in.
Yeah. So, those were the problems I remember with that one.
So, when it comes, if this planning goes through, this proposed motion goes through, then those are the kind of recommendations because of our experience. I've been reading some of the files and some of the comments and letters that were written, and some other neighbors have some really interesting comments as well, and from a design perspective, that kind of a thing, that just make it more neighborhood friendly. I think it's certainly better than an apartment or a really dense, condo project. I think these are really nice, but just depending on where they go.
And how they're organized
Yeah.
as well.
Uh-huh.
I would say in this circle, voice of the community should trump all other voices, because that's who we are,
And we represent
right?
it. Yeah.
You represent me, the stakeholder. So that voice of the community is, this space is the only place where that voice has a place to speak.
Exactly, and I think if this motion goes through, then we will have more opportunity to weigh in.
Is there,
Already second.
Cindy, go ahead.
So just wanted to clarify, so you're making a motion to support Tom's motion, is that correct?
Yes, that's it. That's basically.
Although
You
he's
guys,
basically
can I
taking the
read,
wording.
or do you guys want to hear the motion? Because I think now I understand a little better after reading his motion.
Well,
Okay,
he'll
Or you can
read
read it.
Okay, go ahead.
Well,
Go
no,
ahead.
she's gonna
Have
read
another-
Tom LaBonge's motion.
Yeah,
I'll
because
reread this
basically
one.
we're supporting his motion. We're just rewording it in our.
I just
own
kind
way.
of took a few words out of there, just kind of reworded it.
Okay, so basically Tom's motion is the small lot subdivision ordinance was enacted by the city of Los Angeles in 2004. The small lot subdivision ordinance is an innovative zoning tool that allows development of townhouse-style homes on urban infill lots with commercial or multi-family residential zoning. In most cases, the density of a small lot subdivision is much less than what an apartment or condominium developer could build. Despite its advantages, over the last 9 years, problems in the implementation of the small lot subdivision ordinance have come to light. In many cases, small lot subdivisions have disrupted the character of existing neighborhoods. They are not compatible with nearby buildings and do not relate well to the street. To solve this problem, the Director of Planning should update and improve the small lot subdivision guidelines. They are out of date and must be amended to reflect the reality of the small lot subdivision being built today. In addition, the small lot subdivision ordinance should be evaluated and amended if necessary to see if it contains provisions that make it difficult for small lot subdivisions to fit in with existing neighborhoods. I therefore move that the Department of Planning be instructed to update and improve the small lot subdivision guidelines. I further move that the Department of City Planning, with the assistance of the city attorney, be instructed to evaluate the small lot subdivision ordinance and prepare any changes to the ordinance that are necessary to ensure that future small lot subdivisions are compatible with the neighborhood. So it just sounds like he was making a motion to have people look into it.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's just open it up, look at it, see what amendments are needed. There are problems with it right now. I think it's kind of innovative. It's kind of an interesting. I like the small lot subdivision. I think it has the intent, but it's just not smooth enough. That's all. I think it could stand some amending as well. But this gives us the opportunity to weigh in.
Other discussion? Okay.
I can make just one more comment.
Go right ahead.
After having heard the motion, that you're making a motion to support and additional information, it says in there, it talks about compatibility with the neighborhoods. And I kind of wonder, what research have you done to find out what Mr. LeBong presented to support his statement that these are being done that aren't compatible with the neighborhoods they're in? Because what I see with small lot divisions, they are going into an area that already has a multi-unit dwelling. So is it not compatible because it's not an apartment building next to another apartment, but a townhome next to an apartment building? And there's apartment buildings across the street, so it's not compatible because technically they're single-family homes and they're out of place in an apartment building environment? What does he really mean by not compatible? If you can get kind of this picture that I'm saying, and what evidence did he support where this is where there's an issue?
We've said over and over again that as time goes on, we will have time to adjust our what we consider compatible with our neighborhood, while others will probably weigh in on their communities.
Cindy?
So I think a few things, because it's attached. So a few things of the suggestion I think they wanted to tweak, and they used the word tweaking, and it's on the Tom's letterhead, is, for example, like the trash collection, requiring private trash collection, thereby setting aside space on the property for a communal bin. It does not make sense to have all the individual barrels out on the street. In many instances, 14 to 20 barrels. So I think some area, I'm looking at 6 areas they want to look at. For example, trash collection. For another example, rooftop decks need additional review to make sure that they do not turn into additional habitable spaces and so forth. So I think they did outline about 6 things for them to kind of evaluate and look at. And I think from Tom's office, they did make a suggestion. I don't think those things are formalized
No,
yet.
they're not
but-
formalized. Those are just opinions, and if you go to the file, you'll see a lot of letters from other neighborhood councils, neighborhood organizations, and individuals on some of the issues they've had. So these are just kind of informal comments right now. Formal comments and formal recommendations can be made down the road when we have more input.
Exactly, and that's.
But right now, these are just thoughts.
Yeah, and that's what I was looking at, that this is just one in a series of recommendations we can make over a period of time as more formalized proposals come down the pipe. Right now, we're just trying to get.
The opportunity to do that.
To
We're
say
asking
something.
them to evaluate.
Support the
and revise.
motion.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
It's kind of simple, because
All right.
there's no argument with this, really.
Exactly.
Any
Kind of
further discussion? Seeing none? All in favor? Does anybody need me to read the motion?
No, we've
Read
read
it, okay. All right, to support the recommendations made within the July 1st, 2014 Planning and Land Use Management Committee report relative to evaluating and revising the small lot subdivision ordinance to ensure that small lot subdivisions are compatible with the neighborhood. All those in favor? Okay, we got Maria, Cindy, Eric, John. That's unanimous. Okay, our next item is proposed amendments to the baseline mansionization ordinance. And Maria, this is yours again, but just be aware that we're we're at 8:45.
Okay, I can do this quickly.
Okay.
We've actually had this brought up at several meetings, so hopefully you all are familiar with this. Great. Okay. It was enacted in 2008. Koretz made a motion in May of 2014 to amend the baseline mansionization ordinance. If any of you have ever had the pleasure of going through that ordinance, there's bonuses, there's exceptions, there's design bonuses, and I have to tell you, it's really a challenge trying to figure out, you have to sit there and do some math, with the percentages, with the additions, with the subtractions, and all that kind of thing, what this really means. So, I would like to make the motion that we support Koretz's motion to amend the baseline mansionization. It's kind of the same thing with the small lot subdivision. It is allowing us to open this ordinance up to give it some thought and how to make this a little more applicable to neighborhoods across the city. It's very confusing. It's confusing for the developer. It's confusing for the residents. There's exceptions, and there is an amazing amount of math to be done. So in the final end, nobody really can kind of get their hands around what we finally have. I mean, you can do it. You can sit there and do it. I've done the math on these things, but it's not easy. So, probably simplifying this in some way to create, to be more citywide friendly, reduce the redundancy. If, let's say, this goes through, some areas may not want an RFA, some may still want an RFA, but it will tighten up the guidelines a little better to make it clearer.
Well, then maybe that should be our proposal, what you just stated.
Okay.
To make it easier for the average stakeholder to understand, and as you say, get rid of a lot of
the
redundancy.
exemptions, the covered space, the 25% bonus for special design features. I mean, there's all sorts of things that allow you extra space, another 1,000 square feet on top of what the base building is. So you get these exemptions if you do certain things, and in the final end, you probably. And
Do you have
then
any
who's
examples?
watching these exemptions? And some of the.
Do you have any examples of?
Of what an exemption is?
Well, yeah.
If you get a 400 square foot exemption for there's a garage exemption, there's an articulation exemption, you get a 25% extra allowance for space, there's
Is a garage exemption meaning that it's detached, or is it a?
I think if it's an attached garage, you get 400 square feet that is given to you. So if you have another garage, that's fine, but you get 400 square feet that's already given to you on top of the base of your floor plan. You're also given extra space for applying for green, for special environmental, and those are very, very hard to regulate or even know what they are. And you're also given.
There's one for a balcony too.
There's one for covered patio. Covered patio, right. And you get more space if you have there's an exemption for covered patio. So all in all, if you take all those exemptions and add them up, you can get an extra 1,000 square feet on the base of your building. And it's rather confusing, it's rather convoluted. But some of these exemptions would still apply, but maybe not the long list, and it confuses developers, it confuses neighbors, it confuses building and safety, because we've had some of these things go through. So
Okay.
I would just say, let's support the motion.
Okay, so tell me what your motion is.
The motion would be, let's see here.
To support.
To support Koretz's motion of 51614 to amend the baseline mansionization so that so that future projects would be more compatible with the existing character of the neighborhood. Something very simple like that. Because again, it's like the small lot subdivision, we're opening it up for input across the city.
I would add to that, perhaps simplify the exemptions.
Well, you know what, just how, because you know, that is basically his motion, is to make it more simplified.
Okay.
And I think when we throw that out,
What was the date on his motion?
5/16/14.
Okay, I have support Corette's motion, 5/16/14, to amend the BMO so that future projects would be more compatible with the surrounding area. And,
Simple.
is there a second?
Second.
Okay, second by Eric. All right, so anticipating one of the questions, what specifics does Corette's have in his motion? Does he list any?
Okay.
Let's
Okay.
hear Corette's motion.
All right. All right. It's a long motion. Or do you want me to just do the
You
bullet
can
points?
summarize,
Just
yeah.
bullet points, okay. Green bonus provisions will need to be looked at, exactly what this means and how it's defined, and the bonus of a 20% increase on the home size needs to be relooked at based on green bonus provisions, because you get extra space with a green bonus provision, so they want to define that, look at that more closely. 2 design bonuses that increases by 20% the size of the house. So those have to do with design bonuses, and that has to do with the articulation and certain way it sits on the lot. I'm not exact, my memory is failing me a little bit here, but there are design bonuses that need to be looked at that will increase the rate of the size of the house. Also, FAR bonus in R1 single-family zones. R1 zones that exceed 7,500 square feet by right have a FAR of 0.45. So probably reducing that or decreasing that, because it's a smaller lot to begin with. 40% or 45% of a 7,500 square foot lot is quite large with all the exemptions. And then reevaluate FAR exemptions, looking at some of those. So I think those are worthy. Now, those are just some of the items that were brought up. There's other amendments that can be brought forth as well. These are just like the small lot subdivisions. So this is the talking stages, these are suggestions. These can be looked at, and all these recommendations, further recommendations can be made.
Okay. Discussion or comment? Mr. Guzman?
Okay. Well, first of all, again, the comment applies to trying to make sure that when you put in a council file, it's a link on the website agenda so the general public can find it easily. As Ross represented earlier, it is easier to find if you want it, but you have to assume that the general member of the public's not been a realtor for 30 years and knows how to do these kinds of things like me. So I can find it, and I have read it, and I don't understand why a motion's being made at all in the first place regarding this, because it's in baby stages. 80%, and I don't understand how the motion fulfills the goal of the neighborhood council plan to bring the public closer to government. I, in my conversations with the public, have discovered that 80% of them don't even know what the BMO is. And I feel like it's the responsibility of the neighborhood council to educate the public as to what this is, so that when the time comes for you to vote on these changes to it, the public at least has a little background of what we have in place now. So when you do go to make those changes, they know you're going to meet and talk about those changes and make decisions to support or oppose them. But they'll at least understand what we're starting with, so they know what changes are being proposed and can make public comment accordingly to their feelings. Now, I notice in your agenda item that you have this thing in here that says the residential floor area district remain intact. I'm not sure what's meant by that. But I got to tell you, there's a serious problem with the written language of the BMO and what it says about an RFA district. If you read it very carefully, one of the, there's four ways that an application for an RFA can be submitted. The first way is to have, well, let me mention the three exceptions first. The three exceptions is that an RFA can be processed or initiated by the Department of City Planning, the City Council, or the City Planning Commission. The fourth way is the public's way to initiate such an event. And for the public to initiate an RFA district, it is required that they have 75% of the signatures, and this is where we do need to change it. The signatures of the owners, lessees, and something else. And this is what has to change. I don't understand why they have that lessees in there. The lessees don't own the property. Why should they be part of an application for an RFA when they don't own the property that's going to be affected by the change? So I see that deficiency in the language for the part of the baseline mansionization ordinance establishes the procedure for the establishment of an RFA district. So I think you need to take a look at that RFA language and really think about whether the lessee should be part of those 75% signatures on an application to create it.
Other discussion?
Well, I understand in a perfect world that would be true. But remember, everything we're talking about here actually comes from the city and the city departments. We didn't create BMOs or RFAs or any of that. That's in the language of the city. All we're doing is responding to it, and what we're trying to do is make it compatible with our community. We can't go off and we can't educate. That's not our job to educate all the stakeholders, especially if they don't show up. Now, if they show up, we might be able to enlighten them about a few things, but we weren't elected. Neither is the city council downtown. They'll tell you. And you were at the Congress. I know you were. I saw you there. We spoke.
We rode on the elevator together.
Did they ever tell you that they were there to educate stakeholders? No. You want to be educated? Show up at the meetings, show up at the gatherings, get involved, and you will get educated just by being there. At every one of our meetings, you seem to take the position that we're not doing this for the stakeholders, or we're not doing that. That's not our job. Our job is to bring something before them. If they're interested, they can come, they can get involved, and they'll find out, and then we can move on together. We'd be a lot more enlightened if there are a lot more people coming. We try to get them out, we try to get them here, but you've gotten involved. You've educated yourself, but it is not. I am not a teacher. I wasn't elected to be a teacher. I was elected to represent. And by the way, as we've said, we're non-paid. We are advisory at most.
Well, Eric, let's bring this back around to the BMO.
Well, I am.
This is a valuable discussion, but it's not part of this.
Well, I think it has to be because it keeps being brought up that we're not doing.
Okay, Eric, Cindy, go ahead.
I was going to call the question, but before I call the question, just want to comment. I think stakeholder has the right to voice their opinion, and I think for us as committee members, is kind of address the issue and not taking it like personal offense. So I like to call the question.
Okay.
Just need a second.
All right.
Or do I need a second?
Yes, second by John. All in favor of calling the question? Okay. So we've got John, Maria, do you have your hand up?
Yes, oh, I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maria, Cindy, and Eric, and me. Okay. Any opposed? I did call John.
Oh, okay.
Any abstentions? Okay. The question's been called. So the motion to support the Corrett's motion dated 5/16/14 to amend the BMO so that future projects would be more compatible with the surrounding area. All those in favor of that motion, raise your hand. We have John, Maria, and Eric. All those opposed? And abstentions? Cindy, and the chair is not voting. Motion passes.
Just as an interesting factoid, there are 173 pages of support for what we just done. People, other counties and other people.
Okay. Next item, 3C, Granada Hills Pacific Plan Commercial District Prohibited Uses and Enforcement. Again, Maria, this was a item that you had requested.
Okay,
So you can introduce it.
I have some real concerns about our business district, and since our specific plan is up for revision, I would like to look at some of those businesses that are crime magnets, such as massage parlors, which have been fronts for prostitution. Jerry, you and I have been dealing with those over the years, along with the city attorney, as well as the marijuana dispensaries that have been subsequently closed, luckily. Your feelings may be, but I have to tell you, they were serious crime magnets. And now we've got hookah lounges. We've got 3 right now. I'm not sure how many massage parlors we have, probably 5. We have a new massage, hookah lounge, probably in the making. And so I've been working with the LAPD, with the city attorney's office, with Milena, to make sure that we can craft a language, and this is going to take some time, to craft some language that we can exclude these uses or have a clearer definition of what is a massage parlor. Because massage parlors can mean anything. And give the state control back to the cities to regulate these. Also, hookah lounges, some cities have absolutely come out and prohibited them. Medford, I know San Francisco keeps going back and forth. They have a quasi-prohibition of the San Francisco of all things. Oakland's been looking at these. So they do violate Clean Air Act on some levels, but they have a loophole because you're not actually lighting up a cigarette. So that's a kind of a...
Keep in mind, the city of LA, they adopt the state law on that, but go on to extend the definition of smoking to include e-cigarettes, hookahs, and
all that.
yeah, there's a bit of language there. So in LA, it actually incorporates.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So actually, I don't know if we really need to make a motion or a decision. You know what? Yes, we can. We can make a motion or a decision to be looking at specific plan revisions in terms of hookah lounges and massage parlors,
Right.
and prohibit and looking at the use for
Well,
the
we
specific plan.
can look at it without making a motion, so.
Well,
How can we incorporate this so we really get something on paper that we do something with this?
you know, earlier on, you were talking about the marijuana establishments, and I do remember we had this ordinance about how close to a school it could be,
Sensitive uses.
sensitive uses and stuff like that, and how many could be within a mile of one another, mile within school, churches, and I think that might be a
Maybe
better
we could do
way
something like that.
like that with the hookah lounges and massage parlors, saying, you know, and I do know that there has been the state is talking about regulating massage parlors and massage therapists.
Yes,
there was a big
that's
bust-
define that,
There was
yeah.
a big bust recently down by the airport.
Torrance. They
Torrance.
had a major. They
Yeah,
had a
it
major.
was major bust about prostitution and everything else. But I think what we may do is look at what the state is proposing and try to incorporate that into our specific plan, along with any of these prohibited businesses that we don't find conducive to the neighborhood, and at least make it very hard for more than one to be within a certain footage of schools, churches, and other establishment of the same kind. In other words, if there's already one, you got to go at least another mile before you can have another one, and it's got to be so far from any schools, churches, and so forth.
But you know what? With the hookah lounges, actually, they probably are illegal. So I don't even know if we want to put in a distance requirement for those, because technically, those are bordering an illegal use.
Yeah, but until they are made illegal, what do we do in the meantime?
We had a condition, Jerry, you and I were working on. Any kind of use that is considered prohibited by state or federal
Yeah,
agencies, we would just say would be prohibited in our specific plan. We
Right.
could put in a
I mean,
condition like that.
I think that was a good
Uh-huh.
add-on, but I also want to point out that the issue here, I mean, it's not a matter of incorporating state language into our specific plan. We've got a prohibition in the specific plan against massage parlors.
Yeah.
The problem is that the
Defining
way
it.
they are defined, both at the city level and at the state level, preclude enforcement. It's, if a massage parlor straight up were to open, it wouldn't be a problem, but they don't do that because they can get busted. They get a licensed acupressurist, and then all of a sudden it's not a massage parlor, it's an acupressure medical facility. And it's no longer, you come in and say, well, you're a massage parlor, and they say, no, we're not, there's the certificate, we are a medical establishment, and that's the end of the discussion. So it's up to the state to work that definition so that what walks like a duck and looks like a duck can be.
But couldn't we as a
addressed, but-
specific plan, we have a tighter rein on these kind of things. We can take a state, and then we could probably tighten it up a little bit.
Remember that the issue is we can't, and this is something I learned after doing this for a while, you can't just arbitrarily
No.
ban something. There has to be
Language.
there has to be obviously a reason, and it has to be able to be backed up that, okay, this particular type of business causes this impact to the community, and therefore it's not going to be allowed in a certain zone or a certain area.
You know what, when I read this stuff off, these articles that I collected about hookah lounges across the country, and some of the things, and the World Health Organization and all their opinions and all these kind of justifications, because I really did a lot of research on this. I reviewed this with Milena, and she says, wow, you've got some real backing there, that we could really use that as a justification.
That's what's required, exactly.
And then she says, we need to get a city attorney to craft the language, but Maria, I think we can help you with this. So she's supportive, and maybe we can get a city attorney on board, because frankly, I have no idea how long this community plan is gonna take to revise.
Yeah.
I mean, if this is dragging on, then what, 10 years?
Yeah.
Come
And
on.
at the bunk meeting, remember,
Oh.
we weren't the only ones. There was at least a half dozen other neighborhood councils who were there who were backed up behind us. They were waiting as well.
In the queue.
In the queue. So it's like, okay, what do you do? Speaking of which, you just said it's prohibited if the state and county or whatever is prohibited for those uses.
If it's something that's against state law, it's common sense
Yeah.
that it's.
But it's good to reiterate that.
My thing is that we're talking about the specific and community plan. If we don't think about crafting something now, especially with the new marijuana ordinance, which I think it will be voted in 2016, I guarantee it will be. And I think it's going to have backing from a lot of businesses and everything else. We need to start crafting something now for the community plan to preempt, because what happens when it becomes legal? All of a sudden, all that crap about where you can put one goes out the window. I think we should try to get in front of this now.
Well, you know what, since that's kind of still in the legislature, and being preemptive could really, cause us some problems, we could always amend the specific plan. There's nothing stopping us from amending it, but right now, we have these uses that are clear.
I'm
Yeah.
not saying that we should not say, okay, this is prohibited,
Uh-huh.
but isn't there some way we could put in language that would if it became law, legalized, that we could say, okay, you still have to go by this regulation, X number of distance from schools, X number of distance from another establishment.
But how do you know the state regulations wouldn't have that already? You might be creating a redundant kind of a situation.
I'd rather have a redundant than not have anything. Remember, everybody here in California is looking at Colorado and seeing what they're doing, and they've opened up everywhere in Colorado. From what my friends have told me and everything, it's like you could throw a rock, you hit another one. You hit another one, you hit another one. They're making so much money, and again, I think that's why it's going to pass, because state legislatures are licking their chops about the money that's going to be coming in from this. And so I'm just saying,
Okay.
if we could be preemptive
Okay,
somehow.
Eric, how about you bring in a agenda item? Because this is not on the agenda.
Yeah, I know,
You
I
know,
know.
so maybe down the road.
For the.
Well, we're talking about the specific plan.
We're talking about the specific plan.
And
Eric,
prohibitive
comment
uses.
on it. We're just still, we're back on the hookahs.
Yeah,
and
but all I'm
massage
saying
parlors.
is it comes under prohibitive uses, and that is
Fine.
what we're talking
Cool,
about.
and I've got some other ideas
Yeah.
too, but okay.
And
I mean,
I'm
I
just
can start
trying to
with
think
these
if
two.
we could come up with some language that, should something come up that we don't already have.
I know.
Could
How do
it be there that we could say, well, we already have, that if something like this comes along, and it could pertain to hookah lounges or anything else that has to do with smoking of any substance, that you would still have to have it X number of distance from schools, playgrounds, churches, and
Okay.
those kind of establishments.
Eric, let's bring it back to what we're talking about, and
Okay.
why don't you get that on the motion down.
Cindy, you had,
Well, yeah, because so do we have a motion on the floor? And
Yeah.
We
Back
do.
to this.
Okay.
well, I think we do not have motion on the floor on this
Yeah, we
yet,
don't.
so
and I
what
just
I-
want to be clarified.
what I'm thinking is we don't,
We don't really.
this is a great discussion, but we don't have anything concrete
to make a motion
to
about.
put a motion to recommend it be added to the specific plan.
Right.
So,
Okay,
and we don't need to make a motion to think about or
No,
or
Yeah.
go
Let's
back and do
just,
some
okay,
research
so
and
let's
come
just,
back with
you know,
something.
let's just kind of take a look at some prohibited uses and let's, work with the city attorney. We've got a neighborhood prosecutor that might be able to help us. Her name is Aline, I forgot her last name, but she's a new neighbor. You don't know? Okay.
Yeah.
I met her at that, I think at that bump meeting.
No, you did not. She
There
was
was
just,
a new
I
neighborhood
love, isn't it?
prosecutor. who-
yeah, but that wasn't the same one. That's not Aline.
Isn't it Iolette?
No, I let.
Oh, she was at the,
Oh,
she
oh.
was at the thing with Mitch Englander last week at the.
She may have been.
She was there, because
She
she
may have
was
been.
introduced.
Okay.
Okay, so let's move on.
Any other general comment on this item, public comment? Ross?
Is it possible to limit their hours of operation?
Sure.
Is that one
Absolutely.
possible ordinance, or you're calling yourself the side parlor or whatever?
Yeah.
You can only be open from 2 PM to 4 PM.
Well, you would have to be able to, what I mentioned before, you would have to be able to justify the restriction based on the
It can't be
impact that it has.
capricious.
So you can't just say, we don't like,
I don't think these.
we don't like fiction bookstores and
Mm-hmm.
ban that, because without some reason behind it, you can't have the ruling. Mr. Kuzma?
I know it's redundant, but I will say it again. The neighborhood council is charged with the goal of bringing the public closer to government. And at the Planning and Land Use 101 meeting at the Neighborhood Congress on Saturday, after it was open for question and answer, I asked the presenter what they would recommend to a Planning and Land Use Committee as a plan to get the word out to the community, to get their feedback before taking action. And, it's kind of interesting because her answer boiled down to this: be proactive.
Yeah, she
Now-
didn't have an answer.
No, she did, Eric. Her answer, no, it's on, Eric. She did have an answer. Her answer was to be proactive. And proactive means you don't let the public fumble around to find the stuff on their own, kind of like what happened with the cell tower issue, where we didn't reach out to them, so they didn't know. They found out by accident. Then they found out that the committee voted to approve it. Well, at least that's the way it was presented to them. We know you only voted to, you took a vote of no opposition with some conditions. Thank goodness you took some good notes at the planning and land use meeting to get that issue straightened out. But again, the idea is to avoid those situations from ever occurring again by being proactive, meaning not waiting for the stakeholder to find you, but to seek them out and to seek their opinions out. Because that's what it means to bring the public closer to government.
Well, I do agree. Our unfortunate position is that we're allotted a relatively small amount of money, and what we really need is a full-time or one or two outreach people who can actually go out and do this. I actually have a question. Are there any other councils in the area or in LA that are doing a good job of this and getting?
I haven't found one yet, but I can tell you that the Encino Neighborhood Council on their bylaws and rules committee meeting, which was occurring Monday night, had an agenda item to discuss a planning and land use plan for outreach. And as a side part of that comment to your not having the money is there if we don't spend $5,000 on a town clock to reach out to the community. You can ask outreach to do the job of disseminating the information. That's okay too. You don't have to take it on yourself. You say, hey, outreach, we're going to be discussing this at our next month's meeting, and it's a big issue. We want you to get this information out to the community. Can you put it in an email blast and send it out? That's proactive. That is a proactive thing that engages the public and gives an opportunity for the public to get closer to the government. And you're their first step to getting closer. So, again, it's Northridge East. At least they email out their agendas to the stakeholders in the database before the meetings happen. Just little things can make a difference.
Okay, thank you, Cindy.
So I'm going to actually give comments on that, but I'm going to save it for my closing remarks in regards to which neighborhood council actually has done some outreach.
Well, all I got to say is I was at that meeting, and I thought her answer to be proactive was so vague as to not have any meaning whatsoever one way or another. We don't get paid. Well, we all have jobs, we all have things we have to do. And I still get out there, knock on some doors, but I don't have a lot of time in the day to see about doing this, doing that. It's kind of hard to be real proactive without any financing, the city, you see what happens with the city. When their elections come up and everything else, they have low turnout, and this is the city, and they have billions of dollars at their disposal. Like I said, I thought her answer was conveniently vague to be proactive. Well, in what way? You were asking for specifics, and she just said, be proactive.
Well,
It's a start.
That's a
Well,
start.
that's
Okay, let me move on then, and we have no new business, and.
wait, you skipped one. Proposed wireless.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. So let me just give an update on that. Synergy wrote to me earlier in the month and said that they are working on redesign per our request. What was it, 2-3 months ago?
Yeah.
But they're still working on a redesign and waiting to hear back from Verizon, I believe, on if it'll work, both with the building and such. So they were going to come back. I went and looked at the city planning site today, and the hearing has not been scheduled. So I told Synergy that I'd suggest that we postpone this until next month, so that we can, they can, if they have their new plans, they can come back and see us again. Yes.
Okay, So did the city ever approve? Because I guess that, I forgot her name, but the lady came and she said that it was on the agenda to be approved, or it was
Different,
approved by the
I
city.
think different
Maybe that's
cell
a different
tower.
cell tower. I think
Yeah,
we're
that's
We're
the
dealing
one
with
by the
two.
church.
we're talking about the one on the.
I'm talking about the one that's by the church.
No,
No, this-
this one
This one
is,
On Encino.
this one's on top of the
The
Verizon
Verizon
building.
building, the big building.
And they're looking at putting 3 panels on top,
Right.
not a tower, but
Okay.
they're gonna put some panels
So
on top.
I would love for our committee formally, even though I'm on the other committee too, to request assistance from the outreach committee to reach out. Because obviously it happened with the other cell tower, and so I'm really requesting.
I want to make a suggestion. I think outreach should be done within this committee. We can't rely on outreach.
Yeah, you can't.
We got, I'm not gonna put it on tape, but I think we should do our own outreach. Yes, Ross?
Okay.
So that was one of the reasons why I came tonight, was this cell tower.
Okay.
One of the things that the stakeholders said that lives near me, you mentioned.
Now, are you talking about the Woodley
the
cell
Woodley-
tower?
the-
Okay.
The cell
Because
tower that was
the-
coming off the church.
The agenda item
I
isn't
know,
about
this
that,
is
so
different.
it's a general comment.
I'll
It's
bring
a
it up
general
on the
comment
back.
to
Okay.
Synergy and
Okay.
how this works. Synergy told us and the stakeholders that there's a separate company that sends out mail,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
BTC, I think it was. yeah.
whatever, mail notices.
Mhm.
The stakeholder, and the guy said it went out to every single stakeholder. And one of our stakeholders came back and said, you don't know that because it didn't go out certified mail. Is it possible for us going forward to ask Synergy to make it a condition that every single notification that they claim goes out certified mail, or return receipt, or some way that we know for sure that the stakeholders receive some kind of notice?
We can ask.
Yeah, because
So-
they seem to want to work with us. I
Yeah.
think that this would help them and help us and help the
I
community.
think, well, we could end up with a lot of finger pointing, so we have to be ready to address that. The issue would be that the way they try to do this is to keep clean hands, I suppose is the best way to say it. Synergy doesn't mail it, the city doesn't mail it. City contracts with, I think it's BTC. The city generates the labels, and Synergy pays BTC. The city sends the labels to BTC, and they mail out the notices, and then they certify that they've mailed them. Certified mail would obviously increase the cost. Return receipt would be even better. And I would imagine that what we're probably going to get back is, well, we are complying with what the city requires. And BTC does not offer that service, and the city doesn't require that service. So we can ask them, but
Is there a way that we could offer to help them in some way? Like, this is something that seems
we
to
can
me.
take our outreach funds and
Well, yeah.
put it towards certified
I mean,
mail.
anything to improve, to make this more robust, I guess.
Yeah.
Is, because it is not working. It doesn't appear to me to work correctly.
Well, it's particularly challenging there, and Maria, I guess I'll add on to what you were saying. Jim's committee, outreach committee, was aware of this cell tower in advance, 2 months in advance, and they made several attempts to do some outreach on that. There were flyers that were prepared. I understand that Jim himself visited the location on at least 2 occasions, and at least one was turned away from the condos.
There were
Wasn't allowed to
single-family
distribute
residences, what about them?
the flyers, and now I don't know if he went out to the condo and got turned away and didn't have time to hit the single family, or he put the flyers out there and they got lost, but I know there was an effort made there, but it apparently didn't hit because nobody knew about it. Cindy?
So, actually, I would agree with Maria that I think perhaps maybe it is better, because I can't imagine outreach handling all these committees, outreach.
Yeah.
And I think outreach is supposed to be, focusing on the neighborhood council as a whole, so I kind of agree with you, actually.
I really
that we
rather-
should do outreach within our own committee, so we know what's going on. And I totally agree with Ross, like, it does not work counting on BTC, because I remember the guy was here, it's like, well, we don't do that, there's a company that does that, and I don't know if they did it. And the result is I actually had a private conversation with the church lady. And even though we're on a different topic, but it's just to, I think, it just really concerns me when I hear from stakeholders and a whole bunch of them that nobody got it. So I agree that the BTC doesn't work. So I'm totally in support of Ross's suggestion of maybe return receipt. It's only $1 more, and unfortunately, if they want to put up the cell tower, and that's a price to be paid, especially they're getting millions. I'm sure it's a cost to do business, and I think they only have to send out 500, letters. So I don't think it's a lot. So I would like to make a formal. I don't know what we're doing, but I like to make I don't know. A motion, sure. I don't know if it's a motion. But I like to make the motion that we request the company, whether they do it or not, but at least in our official paper to the city, it states that in our past experience, our stakeholder has not been notified, regardless BTC certified. I mean, it could be a company that put in the track and say, hey, we certified, because nobody ever checks them. So to say that everything needs to have a return receipt, and that is our request, because we've had other cell towers from other stakeholders stating they never got it. And I think by doing that, at least we made our position, whether the city, implements it or whatever happens, we did our job in doing all that we could do.
I think it's a good idea, but I'd like to just make this point that, Synergy didn't come tonight, and so they're not here to be part of the discussion. So, is this something that we can bring up to them when they do?
I think
I don't feel it's necessary. I feel like
Hang on, I'm asking Cindy.
I don't feel it's necessary. I think if they're aware that we're having a discussion tonight, they don't think there's a motion in hand, we're just discussing. So I feel like this is something that's already been expressed by our stakeholder, by me, committee member, and it's been heavily discussed in our general board meeting. I feel like this is something that us, the committee, can put forward as a recommendation and tell them, hey, this is, if they have an issue, they can always come back to us, because like you said many times, we only make recommendation to the city. Whether they do anything about it, whether it gets implemented, it's a whole separate story. Our job is just to express our concern on behalf of the stakeholder. And I had private conversation with that church lady, with that lady afterwards, because I called her to discuss further, and she was expressing to me her, not to say this is the case with this particular Chatsworth and Encino, but she was expressing to me in the last 10 years, all her surrounding neighbors have cancer and got cancer. And so it's a proven fact, at least in her little block, because of the cell tower is there. And she goes, outside of that, and so she knows her neighborhood the best, so I trust her in what she's discussing. So I think by us requesting them to do a return receipt is important.
Okay. Mr. Kuzma.
I live approximately 1,200 feet from Encino and Chatsworth, where this telecommunications cell tower thing is proposed, and it's not a tower per se as the guy presented before. But I'm going to tell you, as a stakeholder living within 1,200 feet, I am opposed to it going in. And I also have talked to my neighbors, and after learning about it here last month, or whenever the guy presented, I think that was 2 months ago, right?
Yes.
2 or 3.
2 or 3. I talked to a couple of my neighbors, and they said, "What are they going to do?" So just as an easy matter, of course, I suggest you might want to ask board member Jeffrey Bohr how he feels about it. He lives about 600 feet away. He's not going to get a notice because he's 600 feet away, not 500.
I'm 500 feet away.
You're on San Jose, are you not?
I'm on Kingsbury.
You're on Kingsbury. Okay. Again, really don't know whether you support this thing and want it there or not.
No,
I certainly don't want it
the
there.
building is there. I don't support necessarily the cell tower, but until I get more information about exactly what it does. Now, I already have cancer, so I'm not worried about whether or not I get cancer anymore. So that's low priority for me, and I'm not sure that cell towers cause cancer. I've never seen any information.
I didn't bring cancer up. I just said I objected.
But it's still, that's just my opinion, and I have talked to some of my neighbors about it. But you know what? I think it might be a good idea. I think I might print up some flyers and just distribute it to the people in my surrounding areas. There's also there's a lot of businesses around there. There's not so many homes.
No.
There's homes on Kingsbury, but the rest of the homes seem to be more than, except for on Kingsbury, all the rest of the surrounding properties are businesses. Because it's right on Chatsworth and Encino, and there's more businesses on Chatsworth than there are residences.
But beyond Chatsworth, it's all residential.
Once you cross the alley.
Once you
Yeah,
cross
once
the
you
alley, you're
cross-
in residential city.
Behind-
So it is
behind it.
directly adjacent to residential properties.
Yeah, I said along Kingsbury Street, but not Chatsworth. There's only one residence on Chatsworth Street
But you got
within
houses-
500 feet.
You got houses on Encino.
Again,
Eric.
I just want to let you know, this
I said-
member of the
I
public
said
is
in
opposed
Encino
to
and
it.
Kingsbury,
Hang
I
on.
said there's all kind of residential properties there, but there's none on Chatsworth Street itself.
Again, I just want to register,
But
this
I-
member of the
I-
public is opposed to this cell tower going in. Duly
Okay.
noted. That's all we need to say.
Exception.
All right, Ross.
One last thing, so the committee is not taking into account anything to do with health concerns when you make, if you do make
You
a vote
can't.
tonight.
You can't.
Right? So we
Right.
want to be clear about that before you do anything, that there is, that this vote has nothing to do with health concerns or anything
Right.
along those
And we're still actually working on the motion, so I want to get the motion out. Cindy,
Okay.
you made a motion, can you
So
restate it?
okay, hold on.
Okay, let me
So
get the
I made a
motion.
motion, but I
Oh,
believe
who's that?
Maria wants to make amendment to the motion.
No,
Oh,
I just
no.
want to bring up something else about the cell tower itself. You're talking about notification.
Yes, I'm
So
talking
I'll be
notification.
talking about the cell tower itself, because I have some other things on it.
Okay,
Okay,
but
so
point
I'll
of order,
finish
she
the
made a
motion
motion,
first.
we need a second.
Okay.
Yes, well,
So-
she hasn't, I need to write it down.
Where did-
Go ahead, Cindy.
So my motion is to request Synergy / Verizon?
Yeah, you can say it.
Okay, Synergy /
About
Verizon.
request applicant.
Okay, request applicant to send notification with return receipt.
Sounds good.
Will this be for all cell towers or just this particular?
I
I
would like
think
to
that should
see
be
for
all.
all of them.
Yeah,
Okay,
all-
for all,
going
for all
forward.
Going forward.
decisions.
That I've got a little trouble with because we don't have an item that broadly.
That's true. So let's go with this one for now.
But the thing is, they've already sent out the notices. This is-
The hearing hasn't been scheduled, yet, so they haven't.
So they're gonna have to send out new notices again?
They haven't sent out any notices.
But will they have, okay, but I thought they sent out notices that didn't get sent out. I'm not talking about the Encino one, I'm talking about are you talking about?
We're
the
talking
one
about
that-
Encino.
I'm talking about Encino,
Encino.
but
I'm
it's
sorry.
on agenda
Yeah,
right now.
that's what's
Sorry.
on the agenda.
But,
Okay,
but,
sorry.
but the reason why we're requesting this is because based on our previous experience, that we were told they were sent, to find out they were not sent. So,
I'll second that.
Sorry, thank you.
no, but thank
I mean,
Okay, so
like
that's
you
a
said,
motion
it's the
by
least we
Cindy.
can do.
you. Yeah, it's the least we could do.
And seconded by Eric. Discussion. So, John.
When the notices go out, it's usually, as I recall, 30, maybe a 45-day notice. It really isn't time enough for the neighborhood councils to react. We do get an early notification process. So, with your amendment, some of the suggestions have been in the past that they send out a notice, but it's more at this early notification time, and then there's a second notice that goes out within that 45-day period. So I'm not sure on the other cell tower, someone may have said they didn't receive it, but the reason may have been is because it wasn't within the window of the hearing. And when you get the notice within the window of the hearing, you don't have a lot of time. So
I'm only aware of one notice that goes out at 500-foot.
that's right.
Notice prior to the
But
hearing.
it doesn't, but there's an early notification that we get.
Right.
That's when you want to engage the community. If you engage the community 30 or 45 days, how do you get it through all of your committees here? How do you get it
How do you-
agendized and approved?
You can't.
You can't, it has to be back at this point. So the one suggestion would be is to have them or have the outreach committee, once we receive those notices, early notification to notify the neighbors.
Well, let me follow up on that, because Cindy had her hand up, go ahead.
Yeah, so, just to clarify with that, because, I don't know if you're at the last, was it the last board meeting or the one before, I don't know.
That was-
But the issue we had is that gentleman that came with the last cell tower case, or maybe it was this one. So the guy came and they said, yes, it was sent or it will be sent. And he came early. He came like 2 months before, a month before, and kind of a situation. But the situation is, yes, there's two notifications. One is notification to us as the committee or as a neighborhood council that we can discuss and talk about it. But the other side of it is also the stakeholders, and they have a legal requirement to send it out. The challenge that we got at the board meeting, which was about 10 to 15 stakeholders that showed up, was saying that they never got it. So even though the words to us is, yes, they will be notified, and I agree with you, yes, we should also do some outreach our own from this committee. But even, I just say, if we didn't do that, and the worst is they were supposed to be notified, they didn't get notified according to them. And so that's where my motion comes in, is yes, we need to do a better job, or we could do more in getting the word out, yes. However, also in supporting our stakeholders and having a voice for them is the fact that, there needs to be a supervision system or something in regards to them receiving the notifications. I mean, if you have, I don't know if that.
Yeah, I understand, but the city, I get city notifications.
Yeah.
I understand somebody comes in and they say, we didn't get it. Realistically, the city sends it out through an independent source. They mail the letters. They didn't read it, they threw it in the trash. My thought is they probably received it, or somebody received it at that address. I can't believe that the city, through BTC, through an independent organization, didn't send those out. I think the bigger issue is that maybe the 500-foot radius isn't enough, number one, and number two is when we get the early notification that the neighborhood council needs to be going out at that point and getting a response, because 30 days in advance, there's just no way to react to that.
Well, that's always been a challenge, is that we know about it, but getting the word out to the right people. I mean, the mailing list is great, but it's quite broad. And if we're sending emails to people who much of the time doesn't apply to them, we start getting people falling off or just deleting the emails. But as to your comment about this committee doing outreach, we've got plenty of work to do on our own, just reading through all these council files and trying to understand the planning and land use and come up with ideas of what kind of policy to put forward.
But Jared,
The outreach committee, well, let me finish.
Okay.
The outreach committee should be doing this, but besides the fact that we have no money allocated to us, $0 allocated to us to do this, the most effective way, I think, that we could outreach on something like this is to make the 500 or 600 or 800, whatever it is, foot notice, because we can easily get those labels. If we did that, 30 days prior, as soon as we got the ENS, as soon as it was agendized prior to our meeting, that would be the most effective outreach we can do. It's pretty simple to do, but it costs money. So, I'd suggest that we look at either tasking outreach with asking them if they can do a mailing, using their budget to do the mailing on issues that are of concern to a certain area. Or we get some of that money and do it.
I'll second that.
Well, that's not a motion, but Cindy's on the floor, Mr. Guzman.
Outreach, Cindy's on the committee. Outreach is attempting to organize a neighborhood council electronic newsletter. And part of their goal for that newsletter is to get advance notice from committee chairs as the topics that will be coming up at the next meeting. So it's not like an agenda thing, but more like a news item. We're going to be talking about the cell tower here, or we're going to be talking about the small lot subdivision, or whatever items are going to be discussed at the next meeting. And so the idea is that newsletter gets out within a week after the general board meeting. So it gives a report on what just occurred and little news articles about what's coming up. And it seems that the stakeholders are more friendly to the reception of a newsletter than they are to a technical agenda. It is one way to accomplish your goal without expenses because it kind of meshes with what the outreach committee is trying to do for the board as a whole.
Right. Eric?
One of the holes I see in this process is the fact that not everyone is attuned to the early notification system. I mean, if you're not even connected with your neighborhood council, as quite a few people aren't, then you definitely aren't connected to the early notification system. You're not going on there to see, well, what's my neighborhood council doing? They wouldn't have to because we send them out those blasts. And certain areas in our neighborhood council, they're just not engaged with us at all. It's sad to say, but they're just not for whatever reason. And so no matter what we think we're doing or try to do, if those people are not engaged, anything that comes out on the ENS or even our email blasts, if they are not signed up with us, they fall through the cracks. And that is a problem with outreach. We're going to have to, I think, I support Cindy. I think it's the least we can do is to just request that they, but I also agree that I think people get them and throw them away. It looks like an advertisement to me, not something I'm concerned with, and it hits the garbage can. And a lot of times, even if you supposed to sign that, mail comes by in the early afternoons before you get home. So what you get in the mail is just this thing saying you got a letter. And I know I've waited over a week before I went and retrieved that letter because I didn't, I was like, who is this from?
Okay, hang on just a minute, because Cindy had her hand up, then Ross had her hand up.
I was gonna just call the question.
Yeah.
Well, we've got some people that still want to speak, so, I mean, if you're calling the question, is there a second on that?
Second.
All right, all in favor of calling the question? Cindy, who do we have? Cindy, Eric, Maria, and John. Okay. All right, the question has been called. So the motion is to request the applicant to send the required notification via return receipt requested. All those in favor?
Adding color.
So we've got Eric, Maria, Cindy, John, and the chair is not voting. Any opposed? Actually, the chair will vote for.
Okay, so it's unanimous.
Any opposed?
But you're unanimous now, Jerry. There's nobody to oppose it.
Just got to ask, any abstentions? All right. So as a person who just voted for it, I am going to ask to reconsider this motion since the question was called a little early.